Jason, what is up, my friend? How was breakfast?
What's going on, y'all? It was nice. It is not too hot yet down here in South Florida. Give it time, but
Yeah.
no, weather's beautiful. Getting ready for another match day.
All right. When you look at Messi and friends coming into this one, a lot of Messi and his friends did not make the trip to Vancouver. They ended up with full points anyway, where you have Robert Taylor getting on the score sheet. When you've had to get studying on this group, which now looks like it's going to have more of Messi and friends involved, possibly, if you listen to what Tata said yesterday, with all caps coming up around the corner. What are you anticipating tonight from Inter Miami?
They're good. I mean, just flat out, this is a good team, and when they're clicking on all cylinders, they're as good as anybody this league has maybe ever seen. The problem is when you have a team with this kind of age, you're not able to hit on all cylinders all the time,
Right.
and it's just impossible. So you got to pick your spots. Very smart to miss out on the longest road trip in the league from Miami to Vancouver. Skip that one, stay home, be a mascot for the academy games at the stadium, and chill out and rest.
Yeah.
You have to do that at certain points. So then the flip side is you have to take advantage when you do that. And they did on the road in Vancouver, and now you've got some fresher legs at home for this one against Atlanta United. And we've seen it in these games for Atlanta United as of late. You've got to get control of the match, and that's the hardest thing to do in the way that I think this league is going, the way the game is going. It's hard to get control of games. More and more teams are going into transitional style games. Miami is a little bit of an old school team in that they seek control. I think Atlanta seeks control. They try to do it in some different ways. You have to get control, especially on the road against Miami. You got to get them chasing you. You've got to get them running after getting the ball back. That's not what they want to do. It's not what they're built to do. You've got to make them do those things. And Atlanta's going to have some patience at times with the ball tonight to make Miami uncomfortable.
Jarrett, go for it.
I was actually going to ask you about that, about being able to control a game against Miami and make them uncomfortable where they don't have control of it. I think one of the things we saw this last week, Jason, was a team that was kind of sloppy at times with their passing, whether that's just physical and mental exhaustion from a really busy week or what. How do you overcome that as a player to be more crisp on the ball, because you just can't have those middle third turnovers. We talk about turnover placement on the field for turnovers. Like, you try things deep in the attacking third, that's fine. You just can't have those middle third turnovers or defensive turnovers. How do you clean that up if you're a player?
You just have to focus. It's easy to say and it's hard to do because when you're tired, when you are feeling the effects of pressure, when you're feeling the effects of recovering from injury, when you're feeling those things, it's hard to focus. And I think a lot of times when we talk about focus in this game, it's people maybe misunderstand it, and you think about, oh well, if they're not focusing, then they don't really care, or they're not playing hard enough, or they don't want to win. No, no, that's not what I'm talking about. We're getting into the fine margins of elite athletes here. Players are locked in. Players are focused on the task at hand, but every single action in a match, whether it is controlling a pass from a teammate, whether it is then looking at your options in front of you and making a decision, it is then not just making a pass to a teammate, but passing it in the right way to them, on the right foot, into the right space, with the right amount of weight on that pass, where you're not 100% in a variety of ways, whether it's fatigue, whether it's mental fatigue, whether it's stress, whatever. You're not going to make those kinds of plays proper. Yeah, you can connect a pass, but can you connect a pass to give your teammate that opportunity to actually do something with it? Or can you connect that longer pass that is a 65% completed pass? Can you complete that when you're not at your sharpest? Sometimes you can't, and it's tough. And that's where this team is right now, is where you're getting into these finer margins of being able to handle those sorts of moments. Against a team like Miami, I think the good thing with a somewhat tired team, now you're starting to get guys back, and that's very, very helpful. And you've got guys who can play more minutes tonight, which will help you a ton. You'll have more options. I think the lineup Saturday kind of picked itself because of who could start and who couldn't start. So you've got some more options here, but the good thing about playing Miami is they're not exactly going to push the pace on you. They're not going to play incredibly fast. Now, I think a lot of people misunderstand that when it comes to someone like Messi. Oh, he walks around. Oh, he doesn't run very much, that kind of nonsense. He's thinking faster than anybody who's maybe ever played the game. So he makes up for it. He can make plays quickly. But in terms of a pace of play from a team, Miami's not going to get you in a track meet. That's not where they want to be. So every play has a little more meaning. You're not going to get through it on speed. You're not going to get through it on, just physicality. You're going to get through it by being locked in, whether it's on the ball, keeping it when you need to, looking and seeing those options when they are available, especially with somebody like Jordi Alba who loves to get forward. Um, that means there's space behind him. And when that time comes to play quicker and be connected on that kind of a ball down the right side behind his back, that can stretch things out. When you can get a 2v1 on Sergio Busquets, when you can press Sergio Busquets, when you can prevent him from receiving the ball out of the back, all these little things, that's what it takes against a team like Miami. So, I wish, Jarrett, I had like something to tell you to say like, oh well, if they do this, then they'll be more locked in and they'll be sharper in all these moments. It's just down to willing yourself through it and managing the pace of everything. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. And I don't think Miami's the kind of team that the pace is going to overwhelm you. The pressure can. The worry of I can't make a mistake against this guy who's maybe the best to ever play this game, that kind of stuff, that can affect you. You have to just lock in and focus on every single action on the ball and off the ball.
When it comes to ins and outs and folks getting back to full song, Gigi getting closer and closer, Derek getting hopefully more and more minutes. You don't have Bartosz Slisz. What are you anticipating, I guess, in combination with tonight and with Charlotte on the weekend? What are you looking at when it comes to the starting lineups and who might be getting minutes and added minutes and things like that?
You can't think about Sunday right now. Sunday is on Sunday. It's Wednesday, and all you can worry about is what you have here, and then you start to assess what you can have for Sunday. You can't even have that in your consideration tonight. So tonight, when you start to look at availability, Yorgos isn't going to be in a position to start. You would know that. Like, can he give you something off the bench? Sounds like it. Can't imagine it's very much. Almada, how deep can he go? He played 30 plus
Yeah.
on Saturday. Can he start? Can he get you to 60? And I think this is always the thing where I kind of draw the line, and everybody does it differently. I think if you can get to 60 minutes, then you can start because you're never quite sure of these calculations. And if somebody you think 45 is the max, and you start them and they can't get to 45, you've burned a first half sub.
Yeah.
If you think they can get to 60 and you're pretty sure of that, and they can only get to halftime, okay, you can manage that more easily. So 60 minutes available is kind of the line in being in contention to start. And even then, it's a risk. Tiago's getting close to that. Gregerson is past that. He should be close to 90 at this point. He was cramping up at the end of the game against LAFC, but no injury concern. Derek Williams, can he get you to 60? You're probably into that. Like, him and Tiago are probably into that kind of a conversation of, can they start? Do they have to come off the bench? Could they play 45 off the bench? That kind of calculation. You'd assume it's Dax McCarty for Bartosz Slisz. That's, I think, what most people are thinking there. No surprise. He's fresh after not playing on the weekend. So it doesn't completely pick itself. I think LAFC, like, I don't really think you had many other options in that lineup with what you could have started differently. With this one, I think you do have a few different options, but not many more, to be perfectly honest. So what it turns into, we're just going to have to wait and see how you approach this one. But getting a few extra guys back, I think getting Stian back has had an absolute impact. I think getting Derek back will have a huge impact. Obviously, Thiago, we all know that one. Obviously, Yorgos, we all know that one. But Stian and Derek, I think, are a little harder to quantify, a little more of how they affect the personality of the group, and in a very positive way. So I think you want those guys on the field as much as you can, especially together if you can get it. But you want at least one of them on the field as much as possible tonight. I think they're essential.
Jarrett, for Jason down in South Florida, getting ready for Messi and friends in Atlanta United.
Yeah, I guess looking at the way you talked about to kind of deal with them and making those 60% passes, and somebody mentioned making them run. How important is it for you? If you're able to, what we saw, what you did against them last year, and I realize Messi wasn't here. I really don't give a damn, to be honest. When you beat them at home last year, where you were able to hit switches and really make them run and stretch them out, it feels like you've struggled to get in those positions building out to get into spots where you can overload one side of the field and then create, either numerical or skill advantages on the other side. How important is it tonight, though, if you're able to do that and be able to hit those switches and get Miami stretching, get Miami running, and really, honestly, kind of frustrated?
It's combinations. I think you're looking for the right combinations on the field to be able to do that. I think somebody like Dax McCarty is very important in a game like that. When you look at his ability on the ball, and I think his feel of the game, he's such a good feel player. He's the kind of, I don't know, and you guys will probably have a different interpretation of it than I would here, but I always think of him as that, like, rhythm guitar player in a jam band where he's not always going to be the guy that you notice. He's not going to take a solo, but he's the one that keeps the groove, but can also change it. Not the highlight reel stuff, but he's the one who, all right, you're building up on the left side. There's nothing there. Connect to him and he'll open up the right. He's the one that will, all right, we've been playing at a slower tempo because that's what we've needed to do in these moments of the game. Now we can speed it up because there's an opportunity. He's that kind of a guy. Different feel than Slisz, for example. I think Slisz is a little more similar tempo, very impactful. McCarty's a little more of a guy who I think can change what you do with the ball. And you're going to need to do that tonight. You're going to need to change tempos a good bit against this team. So you mentioned the switches, Jarrett, and I think that's something you have to look for. You have to get your fullbacks forward. You have to get Wiley and Lennon forward. You have to, especially when, and more so from Jordi Alba getting forward, you have to attack behind his back. You have to get numbers flooded into Busquets' zone, which will make the midfielders have to drop back and help him. You have to take advantage of those kinds of situations. And then it's down to execution. And I think you go back to that game at the Benz last year, the execution in that was clinical. You've got to be there again. You've got to, you can do all the right things. You can change the point of attack. You can switch from the left to the right, the right to the left. You can slow it down and speed it up. You can get in behind Jordi Alba. You can double team Busquets. You can do all those things that you have to do, and that this team, in various ways against different opponents, has done. But you got to execute. You got to put the ball in the back of the net, and that's everything that has been lacking as of late with this group is the execution in the final third, the execution in the attacking 18. You get that tonight, then we're having a very different conversation at the end of this. If you don't, you can do all those other things correctly, and you do kind of have to expect that at some point Luis Suarez is going to be clinical inside the 18. Lionel Messi is going to be clinical in a moment where he needs to. You have to execute and convert, and that's been the missing element for this group.
How would you characterize the differences between Josh Cohen and Brad Guzan, whether it's vocal, physical, mannerisms? How would you say, how are they similar and how are they different?
I think physical, they're pretty different. Brad's probably a little more imposing, just size. The difference is going to be an issue. Does it come into play when we're talking about crosses, for example? Maybe a little bit, maybe a little of the feel of crosses are going to be different. I think Cohen does a good job in commanding his 18-yard box, but he's just not the same size. So there's an element to difference there. I think Cohen is very comfortable with the ball at his feet, so nothing changes with that. I think his distribution is excellent. So no worries with anything in terms of build up having to be different or not being at the level that you needed at. I think the communication is different. Early on, it was something that jumped out to me, and probably more so from Brad's perspective as opposed to Cohen's perspective. Gazan is commanding with his voice. He's very loud. He's very vocal. He's very communicative. Cohen is not at that same level of communication, that same level of volume, those kinds of things. And when you get used to hearing one guy consistently, it can take a second. And I think we saw a collision right after Cohen came in at the bends where I don't think it was the same kind of communication. Now, that being said, I think with Cohen getting games, two with Atlanta United, two with the Open Cup, and then the cameo of sorts in Saturday's game, his communication, and that's a two-way street. It's not just Josh yelling. Like it's got to be the communication from both sides. I think there's a better understanding than there was earlier in the year. I think he's more comfortable. I think he's playing with a ton of confidence right now. I mean, he's played in 4 games this season, and he has not conceded a goal in those games that he started. In the game against LAFC, it's a deflection. There's nothing he can do. Anybody who tries to point that at Cohen is completely being ridiculous. It takes a wicked deflection, and he still gets a hand to it. That's the only goal he's conceded on the field this season. He is coming into this with confidence. So if you're Josh Cohen, I think he's the kind of goalkeeper who would like to make a decent save early, would like to get some touches early, just to get into the flow of it. But the communication is the thing that he can't be somebody he's not, but he's got to create that link with the back line in front of him in terms of communication and make sure that what he's seeing, they're handling. And with somebody like Luis Suarez, where you're not talking about big movements, you're talking about little movements inside the 18. He's so good at finding a sliver of space inside the attacking 18. Cohen's communication is going to be key in making sure that guys know when he gets behind their back or gets 2 steps away from their shoulder, that kind of stuff. Cohen's communication is going to be very, very important, and the defenders recognizing that communication and hearing it and reacting in kind is going to be essential to tonight's result.
Jarrett, go for it.
If you are giving the talk into this game, what is that conversation like with a guy like Thiago Almada, who is going up against, the man in his country, who we've joked about? It feels like Almada's been hanging around with him, the way he takes penalties, the way he acts, the way he moves. It seems like he's been taking a lot of notes from Leo. How do you have that conversation with him about, hey, don't be afraid of it, but also don't go too wild?
Be yourself. I think the biggest thing is you have to be yourself in moments like this. Thiago's a different player than Messi, even though they both are of that classic Argentine number 10 lineage, which is a very storied lineage, obviously, and there's a lot of variety in it. It's not all the same. Messi doesn't play like Maradona did, and Ortega did it very differently. Aymar did it very differently. Like all the Argentine 10s, Riquelme, like we can go through all of them. And there's similarities in the sense of the position, what it takes, what you're trying to accomplish. But the way you get there is very different. Thiago loves dropping deeper to get on the ball. It brings him to life in the game. At times he does it a little too much. I think at times this season when things have gotten difficult, he's dropped too deep. I'm not someone who has an issue with Thiago dropping in to get some touches. I think it's where you do it and how you do it that's the key. But you've got to just stress that this isn't the World Cup final. This isn't the ultimate showdown. It's not Almada versus Messi. It's Atlanta versus Miami. And you want him to be himself and do what he does well, which does include some of those moments where he's getting those touches in the middle third, kind of in the front of the defensive third at times. He's mobile. He can get around the field. He can do what he needs to do, but you want it to be in the construct of what the team is trying to accomplish for the night. You don't want Thiago to feel the pressure of I've got to outplay Messi in this game. And look, it happens, especially with young guys where you're facing either heroes or legends of the game, like personal heroes or just legends. You always see the young guy try to play at the level of the great, and that's fine. That part is fine in that context, but you can't try to do too much to get there. I think when we talk basketball, for example, yeah, it can be a little more of the individual performance in those moments. In this one, it can't be because it's too big of a space. There's too many other people involved. It can't be a one-on-one showdown. It's got to be about how you do what you do to the best of your ability within the game model that you have established for the night. And you've got to do that to get the ultimate result in this one, because that's what it comes down to. You don't win anything if you're the better player on the night than the guy in the similar position on the other field. And by the way, there's no in terms of that, there's no guarantee that Messi plays as a 10 tonight. Tata Martino's used him as a winger who cuts inside a good bit. He's used him as a second forward, depending on their lineup. They're not really married to a very specific formation. So, it's not about matching up with the guy playing your position on the other side. It's about how you help your team get the ultimate result. And for Thiago, you just don't want it to be, you don't want to buy into that hype of like, he's got to outplay Messi. No, he's got to be himself. And he's got to be himself in the context of the way Atlanta wants to play.
Broadcast plans for tonight, sir, are what?
6:30, Five Stripes Countdown, and that'll be Abe Gordon and Garrett Chapman. You'll hear from Mike and I and Garth Lagerway in, I think, about the 6:55 break portion of the show, and then we're live at 7:40 with kickoff from Fort Lauderdale. Full-time report will follow. You'll hear from everybody afterwards, and I'm glad. This is the only time I'm glad that we are in a stadium that does not have open windows. I don't like that in general. I like to have a feel for the crowd, but it can get a little hot down here and air conditioning is nice. It could also get a little muggy down here and air conditioning is nice.
Yes. And it could also get a little rainy, and if the rain blows a certain direction and you've got open windows or just an open press box, you're in trouble with your notes.
Oh, that stuff can get handled. That's the easiest portion of it.
But looking forward to the broadcast, my friend. Enjoy your ceviche and everything else that you're going to pack up. And
I'm not packing ceviche. What in the world are you talking about, John? Do you know what ceviche is?
Yeah, I do.
I don't think you do. When you're telling me I'm going to pack it up and bring it back.
Well, unless is there something that you want to pack up and bring home that you can pick up down there in South Florida?
I'm not going to the tourist area to buy stuff.
Get the $9. I went to Fort Lauderdale and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
No, I'm gonna skip that one.
So I figured
you're gonna eat some ceviche too on camera because I need to see this.
Well, like I said, it was when it happened in San Jose, Costa Rica. It was literally a it was a moment of sour face and then pushing the plate over and swapping it out with the boss so she could finish it. She's a fan. I was not. I know that
Jarrett,
shocks.
I'm going to leave it to you to argue with Jon about this.
All right. So be good, my friend. We'll see you later.
Adios.